we will be talking about population explosion. Nigeria is one of the most densely populated countries in Africa, with approximately 212 million people, and is also the country with the largest population in Africa and the 7th largest population in the world. Approximately 50% of Nigerians are urban dwellers, with the rate of urbanization being estimated at 4.3%. In 2021, Nigeria's population is estimated to amount to 213 million. The last population and housing census in Nigeria, which took place in 2006, put the country's population at 140 million. But currently, Nigeria's actual population is uncertain. Some analysts argue Nigerian authorities have been relying on estimates from Worldometer, an arm of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to gauge the country's population. The Nigerian government has announced plans to conduct a national population and housing census in 2022. We have in the studio Dr. Eyitayo Oyetunji, Federal Commissioner representing Oyo State in National Population Commission, to talk to us about Nigeria's population explosion and the plans on ground to change the narrative. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, now, very interesting, like we highlighted in our introduction. Each time we talk about Nigeria's population, we have all manner of figures that we quote, whether we say estimated 200 million, sometimes we say 180, sometimes we say 110, and so on. Do we have a domestically generated figure of Nigeria's population?
Well, when you use words like cook, it makes one to worry. Yes, we do have parameters by which our population is projected. It's not arbitrary. There are certain definite parameters which include death, birth, and migration. But you cannot have an accurate figure for a population except you have a population and housing census. And the farther away you are from the last one you had, the more likely that your estimates are becoming arbitrary. And like you noted, we're happy that by 2022, the country is likely to undergo another population and housing census. So, but in-house at the National Population Commission, using these parameters that I mentioned, which is death, birth, and migration, we have been able to do projections for the population at both national and sub-national level. Usually those figures you quote give only the estimates at national level. So it's only from the National Population Commission that you are likely to get estimates at sub-national level. That is estimates for each of the states in Nigeria. And as you mentioned in your introduction, by the projection that we did in mid-2020, at that time, Nigeria is estimated to have a population of 206. By this year, growing at the rate of 2.6% annually, the population is estimated to have increased to 211, thereabout.
Now, these parameters you mentioned, how reliable are they and how accurate are these parameters? You talk about the death rate, the birth rate. How do we even come about that?
Yes, like I mentioned, the farther away you are from a last census, the less accurate your estimates will be, because the 2006 is actually the baseline from which these estimates are calculated. And like you also noted, we're still grappling with statistics about death, for example. Incidentally, the National Population Commission is still responsible for registration of death and birth in Nigeria and also for migration. But I won't say we are doing very well with death registration, simply because most people don't want to report that event when it happens. But even at that, we still try to use as much as possible other parameters to arrive at those calculations.
Okay. What are, some of the implications of this rising population on the Nigerian economy?
Sorry?
What are some of the implications of the rising population on
the
Nigerian
rising
economy?
population.
Yes.
Well, it's a challenge, really. Very often, people worry about a large population, but a large population in itself is not really a problem. What is more of a problem is the rapidity with which the population is growing. When you have a population that is growing at a rate that is faster than economic growth, that becomes a challenge. The challenges are far-reaching and multifaceted. You have challenges from economy. You mentioned urbanization, for example. When you have a lot of people moving into urban centers, you're unable to cope with the provision of infrastructure, for those people. And that means that many more people dwell in slums. And when people dwell in slums, there are health implications, there are crime implications, and so on. Also, you're unable to make provision for certain infrastructural and developmental facilities, like education, for example. When you have too many children coming into the economy, it's very difficult for you to make provision adequately for their educational needs, housing, health, and so on. So the real challenge that we have in Nigeria is that because of the rate at which we are growing, it's very difficult to get resources to make provision to cope with the increase in population at that pace. And yet, you cannot get the best out of your population if you don't make the right investment on the population. And you can't make the right investment on the population if the population is growing so rapidly.
So do you think population control can work in Nigeria?
Usually we don't like to use words like control. We shouldn't be controlling anyone. People should be informed about the right choices that they need to make. And that's what we're doing. We have a national population policy which was recently reviewed, and that revised edition has been approved by the Federal Executive Council. As a matter of fact, any moment from now, we expect Mr. President to launch the revised national population policy. That policy makes provision for so many interventions, and strategies towards managing the population. And I won't say it's not working, it's working. Perhaps not as much as we would like it to work, and perhaps not at the same pace in the different parts of the country. Because I must mention that there are large diversities in terms of the population profile in different parts of the country. So it's working, but it can do better. The major intervention that you require, to manage and to reduce the rate of population growth is family planning. And I would not say that family planning has been embraced as much as is required if really we want to address the rising population. Family planning is still very low in Nigeria, in almost every part of Nigeria. There are other incidental things that need to be addressed. For example, we need to reduce early marriage for young girls. That also is a challenge. We need education for the girls, because the longer the girls stay in school, the less likely that they are going to get married, the less likely that they are going to start early childbearing, and so on and so forth. So it's not hopeless, but there's still a lot to be done if we're going to address the rapid rate of the growth of the population.
All right, now how much relevance do we attach, to having this data? Because population census is meant to be conducted in the intervals of 10 years. The last one was in 2006. And if you do that calculation by 2016, we are due for another census, but that didn't happen. And now we are in 2021. So how much of relevance do we really attach to this, as we, plan national development and growth?
I tell you quite sincerely that planning without evidence is very harmful, especially for a country like ours. You have limited resources, and if you want to make the optimum use of those resources, they must be targeted. You cannot target them if you don't have information on the population. You don't know who is where, you don't know how many people are where, and so on and so forth. For us in the National Population Commission, we are very passionate about conducting the next census. A lot of people think the time is inappropriate or is difficult because of security, because of lack of resources, because of the impending elections and so on. But for us, we have stayed too long without doing this. And we strongly believe that many of these challenges actually require data, require information if you're going to tackle them. If you're going to tackle insecurity, for example, you need information, you need data. We are almost concluding what we call the enumeration area demarcation of the entire country. Out of the 774 local governments, we've successfully demarcated 772 local governments. Now, the information from that activity is information about all the buildings in Nigeria and what they are being used for, whether they are residential, whether they are used for commercial purposes, whether they are educated. Every standing structure that's a building in every local government, in every ward, in every locality. In that exercise, we've been able to identify them, we've been able to note where they are geographically and so on. That kind of information you require to address the security challenges. For example, we have information about households in all those buildings. What I'm saying is that many of the very challenges that make us think we shouldn't enumerate the population are actually challenges that can only be addressed if we enumerate the population. So to go back to your question is that it is critically important, if we're going to use the limited resources efficiently and effectively, we must have information as the basis for planning. Otherwise, we're just throwing resources in the air. You're just imagining that, okay, there must be so number of people who need help here. There must be, you're not too sure whether they are there or not. And when you throw those resources there, you're not getting results.
Right.
That's why you see, for example, that in spite of the huge and the humongous budgetary allocations year in, year out, Nigerians continue to complain that they're not seeing changes. Part of the reason may be because the interventions are not hitting the right targets. And they are not doing so because we don't have information about those targets. So it's critically important.
Okay, you know, some experts are of the opinion that Nigeria seems to be in some kind of demographic trap. Are we to say that? Do we describe it as that?
Well, I don't know what exactly you mean by demographic trap, I must say. What kind of trap are we saying now?
You know, largely because we don't have the accurate data.
Yeah, well, if that's what you mean, it's a trap. It's a problem. Let me put it that way. It's a problem, really. Honestly, it's a problem. For me, I've been in demographic activities for a long time. It's tragic. It's tragic that you continue to, even in your family, for God's sake. I mean, you don't have information about the family. How can you plan? How can you plan in advance? How can you even plan for the present? How can you know what you need in the next 5 years?
So, but, you know, we have all sorts of programs run by the government, social intervention programs, you know, for instance, where we hear that so number of Nigerians, you know, have been given so and so amount of money over the period of so and so. In fact, just this morning we were talking about how that the federal government intends to provide some kind of transport palliative in view of the plan to remove the fuel subsidy in the coming months. Now, analysts are raising issues as to yes, there is. It's
everywhere on the newspaper.
Yes. There's plan to remove the fuel subsidy. So, to cushion the effect of removing that subsidy, the federal government is saying we are going to, you know, provide 5,000 naira transport palliative and all of that. And then analysts are saying, what's the modality, of determining how to, select those people that will benefit from these things when we do not have a data, like you just mentioned. So it goes back to the issue of, planning and interventions, and having the interventions getting the required results if we do not have the data. What data have we been using all along?
We've been using ancillary data. Government desires to make an impact. This government desires to. And really, they have to make the best with what's available. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, we do work together. They try to get some information from us. But most of that information is obsolete, really. But you cannot fold your hands and say you won't do anything. So government is still trying to see whatever can be done in the interim. And that's why it's because the government really wants to make this impact that the present administration has gone ahead to give the necessary support for the conduct of the next census. It takes a lot of courage at a time like this for that kind of support to be given. And Mr. President has shown clearly that he's very much interested in getting this same data that we're talking about. The interest is evident. You just heard about the NIPS that graduated, the National Policy for Strategic Study, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. The theme that he gave them is population and development. And for us too, you are aware that just earlier in the year, he gave National Population Commission as much as 10 billion to continue with the enumeration demarcation exercise. And now he's given a tacit endorsement for us to conduct the census next year. All of this is because government has understands the need for this data. But in the interim, they cannot fold their hands and say, look, until the census is conducted, we will not do any of those things. The government is still trying their best, and there are ancillary ways that you can get this information. It might not be as accurate as is desirable, but you still do try.
Okay. All right. Now, how much more do we need to do to make Nigerians really see the issue of population as a big issue? Because even when we have the resources, the truth is, if the population is beyond the resources, we may not have the desired, living standard that Nigerians, are all yearning for and looking out for. So, on the part of Nigerians, how much more do we need to do in making Nigerians to see the need to have, some kind of, since you say you don't want to use the word population control, to have some kind of, planning in terms of, population growth?
We have to keep talking about it. And that's why I'm here. I was delighted, when I was told that your program wants to focus on this. And immediately I said, look, whatever it takes, we have to be here, because we need Nigerians to understand the importance of these issues and to have a buy-in into why we need to do it. The reality is because of, I don't want to use the word poverty, but because of the widespread lack and everything, I've been in a situation where someone say, hey, you want to use how many billions to count how many people there are? Just share that money to us, So because of poverty, people feel that, this one, that there's no money, you guys want to use the little resources to be enriching and all that. So we have to keep explaining. It's like education. You say, we have not gotten money to eat food. You say, I should go and pay my child's school fees. The choice is even more dangerous for you not to pay the school fees, because lack of that education is much more costly than how much you have to pay. So it is with having to have information, data about who we are. On the surface, you say, you want to spend so much money. But in reality, without that kind of, look, apart from even planning, information about the population helps you to hold government accountable. Right. That's how you know whether you say you have been spending money on this and that, where you are able to ask and say, look, but we just got information now that this is the number of people in school, these are the number, the population and housing census. The housing component of it is information about the living condition of households. In 2006, the information that was collected gives information about the standard of living of every household. Information about, for example, how many people are living in how many rooms. If I come to a household of 6 people and you have just a room you're living in, that tells a lot, because we ask such questions. What kind of equipment, material was used to floor your house? That tells us something about the standard of living. Do you have water within the house? Do you have to go to a well to get water? Where do you dispose of your refuse and so on? As a household, by the time you aggregate how many households have to go to the river to get water, you're beginning to have an idea about the infrastructural situation in that community. So using that kind of information, actually, you can hold government accountable. That we have not done census since 2006. It's not just that we don't have information to plan. We also have not had information to hold our government officials accountable. Because it's only when we have that kind of information that we show it to them and say, look, you say you've been doing this, but this is the reality,
right,
you know, that you have. So we need to keep engaging Nigerians for them to know how valuable this is.
Okay.
All right.
I really want to ask this question. Do we hope, to see the deployment of technology in the coming 2022, population census?
Thank you so much. I must tell you, as a matter of fact, for us in National Population Commission, we have deployed the latest technology for the next census. I am so proud to tell you that there has never been a time when we have taken advantage of technology as it is for this census. We've done things that even has not been done in other parts of Africa. We're using, for example, at the level of the enumeration area demarcation, we're using satellite imageries. We're not using sketches and maps and so on. Satellite imageries, are like photographs that have been taken from the space.
Right.
So when we talk about every building that I was talking about in Nigeria, we have pictures of them, all the buildings. We can, by the time we say there are 6 people in this building, you will see the building where the 6 people are. That's novel. And for the first time, we're doing a digital census. It's not analog. We're not writing anything on paper. We're using handheld devices to take. That means from the beginning, the information is in the electronic form. You can use it for any kind of analysis. You can share it with any agency. From the moment you're taking, we've done that with the enumeration area demarcation. It was paperless. We didn't use any papers at all. So even data collection is electronic, it's digital already. And that's the first time that you have a census that is 100% digital. You're not going to see any paper at any point whatsoever.
Right.
Okay, so in light with this, the deployment of technology in this, have we considered maybe even prior to the census itself, maybe enrolling Nigerians, even using these digital platforms, maybe the website and all of that? Have we ever considered that, and is that a possibility?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by enrolling Nigeria, but we have tested.
I mean, counting Nigerians digitally.
Yes,
maybe demanding that Nigerians, maybe perhaps go to a certain portal, infuse their data there to show that they are Nigerians and that they are counted, something like that.
No. For censuses in Nigeria, we've not reached the stage. Nigeria censuses are not purely statistical. There are political issues. So you cannot just say go and register and so on. We do what we call de facto census. We have to see you before you're enumerated. In other climes, you can do what is called a de jure census. You don't have to see the person. The person fills a form and sends it, to you. So, but in Nigeria, we do a de facto census. We must see the person before the person is enumerated. But in terms of test, in National Population Commission, we don't just go to the field.
How about the use of fingerprints and all of that? isn't that?
Yeah, it's the biometric attributes of the person. We take some aspect of that, but we're not going for a full-blown biometric census, which means that we're taking all the attributes, your face, your this, but we're going to take stuff like your fingerprints to check against double enumeration. The NIMC is already collecting the biometric attributes of everyone, and we don't want to repeat that, so to speak. But we're going to collect the if everybody had a NIN, for example, there will have been no need to do that. We'll just ask for your NIN and enumerate you. But because not everyone has, we're going to collect the thumbprint to check against double enumeration, so to speak.
Okay. Now
but talking about tests, whether we've tested this technology, as I speak with you, we're doing training now to do what we call the second pre-test across the country. Across every state, we're going to the field from 3rd to 10th December. Our enumerators will be in the field to go and test this technology, to test the methodology, to be sure, one, that people can handle it. Even the people who are engaged in the ad hoc staff, can they use this technology? To be sure that we can get the right responses. To be sure, for example, whether, because we're doing online real-time enumeration, whether the service providers we're relying on for the backbone, of network, whether it's sufficient, whether it can work. So in National Population Commission, we test before we go. We've done a first one. This is the second pre-test we're doing, and we're going to do a trial census, like a mock census before the real one, to see that this technology actually is going to work for the main census. So all that we've taken into account.
Okay, that's very interesting to have that.
Quite interesting.
Well, let's go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll take maybe one or two questions, and then we'll run. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. You are still watching Daybreak on Trust Television, and we are still discussing population explosion. Now, I'm really curious to ask, do you have some form of synergy or collaboration with NIMC and other agencies, to get data with regards to population, and all of that?
Yes, we do. With NIMC specifically, we are the base upon which the entire program is built. You get identity from birth. You're who you are by birth. NIMC manages that identity, but they don't create the identity. So we actually do the registration of birth, and also when you are to exit the NIMC platform by death, we are supposed to be the ones to say, hey, this person has died, so get him off your data. So we are working now towards having interoperability between the two agencies. Presently, unfortunately, we are just moving away from analog birth and death registration to digital birth and death registration. When that is done and we have a digital database, then it's automatically going to be linked with the NIMSI database. You're not supposed to go to NIMSI and say, look, I'm 3 years old. No, they just come to our database and verify that this person was born so time in so place to so household and so on. Because as it is now, that is absent. You walk into NIMSI and you say, look, I'm 20 years old, and they have no any other way of verifying that beyond what you say.
Okay.
But very soon, we've actually launched the digital birth and death automated registration. And once that database comes on stream, it's automatically going to be linked with NIMSI. It's going to be linked with INEC. Recently, the INEC chairman was also saying that they require information about death in order to clean their voter register. How many people on that register have died? It's only us that should be registering. And I like you to keep joining us to appeal to Nigerians. We need to report death. There's no way we are going to capture everybody has died if deaths are not reported. Most of those who report mainly because they want to collect benefits and so on. But it's vital statistics that is needed. When you have information about death in an environment, after a while, you know the frequency of death and so on, you are able to track what is causing the death in that area. Is it malaria? Is it cholera? Is it what? And so on.
Okay.
It's something that part of our culture that nobody wants to talk about death.
All right. So are we looking at a way to, harmonize all this data such that we can have maybe some kind of digital central data, like some experts have advocated, such
National
that,
data bank.
Yes, such that anyone looking for anybody, or even in terms of the fight against insecurity, for instance, is easy to track, and all of that.
Certainly.
Are we looking at that?
Certainly. Government has been working towards that over and over. Committees have been set up to harmonize data from all the relevant data generating agencies. There's supposed to be a national data bank. We're moving towards that. Look, from what I told you now, National Population Commission, we are the only ones who have a geographic database, geodatabase. That is a database that is geographically defined. If I say you are Musa living in so place, we have a geographical reference for where your building is, and so on and so forth.
With what we have
by the
so
time
far,
we link that with birth and death registration, where we're moving towards is that if we say a birth occurred, we're able to say it occurred in so location, So we can say that in so area, 6 people have had birth, 6 people have died, and so on. That way we're able to be improving on the last census, for example, how many people have died. And this information now can be linked to other agencies who know what is happening in every household and in every building and so on. These are all the reasons why we need data.
Okay. Yeah. So with what we have so far, how much of synergy is there with our security agencies in the fight against insecurity? And what role is this data supposed to play, in the fight against insecurity?
Well, present, security issues are not what you talk about in general. But sometimes, the agencies come to us to get information from our enumeration area data. Because like I told you, that's data that has subdivided this country into small units, every entire space of the country. So on that platform, you can see every building in everywhere. For example, in our enumeration area demarcation, we can see the villa. You understand? Every building is indicated, whether it's a rural building, whether it's a ruga, whether it's a farm settlement, whether we have information about them. We have information about how many households are in a ruga, for example, at the time we did the demarcation. So that information is available, and sometimes they do request for it. But
All right.
those are not details that we would like to discuss in a program like this.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you
program
very
and
much,
sharing your thoughts with us on this program. We've been speaking with Dr. Eyitayo Oyetunji, Federal Commissioner representing Oyo State in the National Population Commission. Thank you again. We hope to have you again on the program.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure, and I must say we're happy with programs like this that bring information to Nigerians about population matters. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.